Hello. I know that you're familiar with and you're a supporter of the LGBT plus community, the trans community, and you're always been by this community's side. It was great. So definitely see a connection between your availability to this interview and the struggles that the communities now are currently facing, not only after the pandemic of COVID-19, but also after everything that they've been through after the AIDS epidemic in the late 80s, early 90s. So of course, my question will be, in your opinion, what are the current struggles? What are the focal points that we should really pay attention to when it comes to LGBTQ rights and the transgender community?
I think that, there's such a breadth of different issues for us to be looking at and thinking about, especially now in this day and age. I feel like it's just such a scary time, like with these recent Texas abortion laws that were passed, it just makes it even scarier that, like, not only just cis women's reproductive rights are being threatened, but what I feel is the scariest thing is that they are likely, I'm not super educated on what exactly they have passed, so they might even be doing this right now, which is terrifying, but they might be, taking away healthcare for people who are trans or LGBTQ, going through a health crisis. And I feel like that is a very important issue to be touching upon. I also feel that just raising awareness, we've come a long way since the AIDS crisis started and, happened. We've certainly come a long way in terms of our public visibility and understanding of these things, but I still feel that misinformation and just an uneducation on those subjects is a big deal. Like, I was always raised to understand these things and know about them because my aunt, Alexis Arquette, who passed in 2016, she was a transgender woman and she did have HIV. But at my school, last year we had a woman who had AIDS come in and speak to us, and so many of the kids who were around me just had absolutely no idea about, this issue and this struggle that's been going on for LGBTQ people for the longest time. And so I feel like educating our youth and ourselves as people is just really, really important right now.
Yeah, I definitely see and understand also the importance of somebody who looks like you, who is also near you, talking about a struggle that you don't really know. Because I see also with my peers, it's so nice to see when you don't differentiate between you and somebody else. Yesterday with John Cunningham, he was talking about otherism. So identifying somebody else as other, so you don't have to actually pay attention to his problems, because if you think that he's going to have, or they're going to have the same problem as you have to also ask yourself, what are my struggles? What is my value? For example, why don't they have access to treatment? And I do. For example, I know that in America, healthcare, now the healthcare system, it's a huge controversial question, because many young people are starting to ask, healthcare is a human right, and we all deserve access to treatment, and we all have the need for accessible resources to come to us in also not in a difficult way. So I definitely see. I think it was a great opportunity that you have. I wish that we could have also here the opportunity of hearing and listening to somebody who maybe went through the struggle of HIV or is a part of the transgender community. So we can also start identifying each other as part of the same group on the same side. So I was, yeah.
I just feel like that's such an issue nowadays, where like people are picking out like, okay, well, you're this and you're this and I'm this, and just like a huge dividing people up based on what they identify as or just what group they're a part of, like grouping people up, rather than realizing, okay, we are all at the end of the day sentient human beings, and we all deserve at the very least like this level of respect and understanding and treatment. And I feel that that's just incredibly important that we realize as a society, you know? I mean, there is no healthcare shouldn't be about what your political beliefs are or what you choose to identify as. It should be, okay, you're a person who needs help with your health and that it's given to you, you know? It shouldn't be about these other things. And I think that people like in politics or whatever it may be that are making health, just physical and emotional health, about where you stand on a spectrum, I think that's incredibly selfish, you know?
Yeah, we definitely hope for this new presidency or like the next 10 years to see a real change in this. I know that you're also an actress. You come from an acting family. So I was really curious and I really wanted to ask you, since the beginning of the what we can define as the HIV/AIDS epidemic, the film industry has changed so much. We have seen so many topics being more and more openly discussed, so many movies, recently also TV shows who are starting to portray characters who look like us, who act like us, and who are maybe young people who have to fight for their rights. Maybe like an example, this was huge in Europe, could be Euphoria, for the representation of LGBT plus community and the transgender community, and also many, many more movies that are starting to help people see themselves in TV. What are your hopes and future regarding the AIDS, HIV conversation in the industry, so within the industry?
I think, you know, that's a really good point. I think one thing that we should work on, it's not necessarily just in the industry, but it will affect the industry, is first, you know, raising people's awareness of who these people are. And like, you know, it's strange. A lot of people are really miseducated on how AIDS is even contracted, HIV is even contracted. And so I feel like when we really iron that out, then people will become more understanding, and like there won't be such a taboo of allowing these people in these spaces. And I feel like empowering the voices of people who have gone through that, or people who like are, you know, personally related to people who have gone through that, and people who just truly care, would be very important. And I'm so interested to see what those kinds of voices would bring out into the media. And I think also, you know, there's a big trend of putting like marginalized people in heart-wrenching situations. And I kind of just want some media that shows people who are, you know, shows the struggle, and of course to help us understand, but also I want them to be happy, you know, in this media, and living full lives, so that little young kids who are watching these things can see, you know, no matter what this struggle is that I might go through, there is the opportunity for happiness, because that is what I deserve.
Yeah, the right to happiness. I think after the pandemic, we have all asked ourselves how the future is going to look like, and what can we do in the future to be a little bit happier than the last year and a half. On this note, I think you also partially already answered that, but another question will be, since seeing characters who look like us is helpful for young people, for example, young women from different sides of the world, what would you do to enhance acceptance and spread awareness when it comes to, I know it's a very specific question, when it comes to character portrayal, so portraying characters, especially young people, in movies and TV shows or on the media?
Well, is it like me portraying them personally or just as in general the portrayal?
Like both. Like, what would you do, and what suggestions will maybe you give to directors or screenwriters or producers?
I think what's very important is giving voices to people who like genuinely experience that. So for example, if there's a movie about a lesbian woman, you should cast a lesbian woman so that she can accurately portray that, you know what I mean? And she has her voice. She should have her voice be heard by all of those, you know, who are writing, directing, producing, so that they understand her experience and, you know, they can work off of that together. So I feel like that's very important because
Yeah.
those are the people that will have the best understanding and will be able to ultimately help you create the most accurate story.
I feel like casting the right people, as you said, so can be really beneficial to a community that feels marginalized. So,
Yeah, I don't see, you know, what the rage is for casting like straight people for these roles. That you'll get so much more out of casting someone who truly has been through this and understands it, you know?
yeah. On this note, I've in Italy recently the last season of like the new season of Sex Education just came out, and I think that's a great example of a TV series talking about abortion rights, and the access to treatment, and also the struggles of young women and so young girls and boys accepting who they really are and coming to terms with their sexuality and experimenting in a healthy way. And I think that they did such a great job portraying Maeve abortion, and also all the open conversation regarding sexual assault and violence, not only in relationships such as the work done in Euphoria, but also in Sex Education, when one of the character gets assaulted or molested, and every like the group of young girls, they're very accepting, and also they support her in talking about it. And I remember when, because I recently graduated, when I was in university, seeing that episode gave me such like a heartwarming, good feeling. I felt supported. I felt like I could explain what I maybe what I saw, what I went through, thanks to that. Thanks to the words of that specific character. So I think it was so well written. It's impressive. I'm so curious about the new season. I don't know if in the States it's already out. Maybe. So I'm really curious. So I know that is it already out in the?
Yeah, I think I might be wrong.
Can't wait.
But I love that kind of media. There used to be such a like prejudice or just idea in the industry of like, no one wants to see that stuff. It's like too heavy and people aren't gonna like it. But I feel like series like that, like Euphoria and Sex Education, stuff like that, is what proves no, people actually like watching things like this. They like watching, you know, their own experiences. These are all things that truly happen to us. So why not show that, you know, in the media?
Yeah, it definitely feels like I'm not wrong, because there's nothing wrong with me if I see a character who looks like me. It may be for the people of color community, maybe for the LGBTQ plus community, but we are definitely seeing a shift in something that 10 years ago, or even 6 or 7 years ago, wasn't there. Because of course, we had international TV series, but there wasn't any representation such as the one we have today. So another question will be, your family is definitely a starting point when it comes to having open conversation and open dialogues about so many different topics, and especially if like they're topics that someone is curious about, for example, sexual orientation, or knowing like the HIV/AIDS conversation and status. So I was really just curious about how did you get in touch? Like, what was your first conversation or like impact with the HIV/AIDS conversation? So what was your first kind of general idea or general first discovery, like, oh, this is a thing, and maybe something that affected your family personally because it did, because of your aunt, maybe something also that you see in movies, books, or with friends. So how did this conversation change your life, and if yes, in which way?
It definitely did. I'm lucky to have grown up in a family where like any topic that I wanted to ask about, I could ask and they would give me a good answer. But I remember my introduction to that very, very vividly. And it was my aunt. She was living with us for a time, and I hadn't gone back to see. I was very young at this point, so I just didn't really understand why or what it was. I hadn't gone to see her because she was living with us just in a separate part, and I hadn't seen her. And I asked my mom, and so she brought me in there, and that was my first, and I spoke with her, and even though I was young, I sort of understood what was going on, and I spoke to her, and my mom later explained, what transitioning is, and also explained to me that my aunt was ill, and that, what comes with that, and why we were helping her, and why all these things were happening. And that's when it first impacted me in a big way, was that experience. And then after that, it had always sort of been a point of conversation in my life, but it didn't really come to a head until 2016, when she was sicker, and I was also older at that point, so I could understand more what sort of things she was facing. And it just like struck a chord in me, because just like also talking to Alexis and hearing about some of the horrible experiences that she had to endure as a woman who was transgender, I feel like stories like that are incredibly important to give the speakerphone, because it's things like that that get our human empathy going and will make us understand each other as people and our experiences as people.
Yeah. It's so nice to see a family that openly discusses topics that to me are very fundamental, because we all share our stories, we all have the desire for connection and acceptance, not only from our family, but also, and I'm a huge believer in this, from our what we can define as hyper family, so our friends, our loved ones, we all connect in a way or another.
It's true. We all want to be loved by the people around us and feel loved by the world and feel worthy of love. And I think that is something that we're all owed as people and human beings.
What would you think that something that she had taught you, like a teaching, like what would you like to give to others that she gave to you?
She was just such a radiant person. And I remember just really fondly this conversation that I had with her. And I was sort of going through a hard time in my life. I was young and sort of becoming a teenager, and, like a lot of things were happening.
Yeah.
A lot to become a teenager.
All over the place.
And she told me that, it's a bit abstract, but she told me that, like, when she thought of me, she thought of this young, wild girl running through a field of wildflowers. And that was always how I thought of her. And just that lesson of being so true to yourself and to your heart and doing what speaks to you and just deciding to be free no matter of what circumstances you're in, it helped me a lot emotionally. And I feel like I wish I could teach more people that lesson of, like this, like, fierce freedom and pride in yourself. It's, I think, really important. And I think we're all like little wildflowers.
We are. And we definitely have to find the right place to bloom. There's this Disney movie that I really love that says, it may be the last flower to bloom, but it definitely will be the most beautiful. And I was like, yeah, something that really resonated with me a lot, especially during early teenage years. We are so, as someone who's 22, almost 23, I look back and I was like, becoming teenager is so wild. It's so difficult sometimes. This is like my signature question. I always ask this because I really treasure what people tell me. I think it's one of the most favorite part of the interview. What is a quote or a saying that you live by?
Ooh, that is such a good question. I have like a list of quotes on my phone. I could honestly go through and like read them to you. They are, what I like is quotes that make me feel empowered and mystical in a way. That's what really speaks to me. So here, let me go find some good ones. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like literature, I really want to encourage more people to just get reading and like experiencing these different kinds of media, because you can genuinely just the best things.
Oh my God, then I would have to ask you, what is your favorite book? It's like,
After this,
I'm also a huge book nerd.
I love that. By suffering we learn. And then there's one that says, a birth, a death, and in between the two, beauty and melancholy, which just talks about, it means like the circle of life, and a birth and a death, and in between the two, there's beauty and there's also sadness and every human emotion. I love that quote.
Oh my God, so nice. It reminds me of a quote from Rilke, which is a German poet, that got famous because of the Jojo Rabbit movie. This quote really went viral because of the Jojo Rabbit movie. And it says, let everything happen to you, beauty and terror, just keep going, no feeling is ever final. And I was like,
love that.
That's something nice and poetic in this. That's so nice.
That's gorgeous. Oh, now I have to think of my favorite book. That's a hard question to
I know. I know.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it really depends on what mood I'm in, you know? Because I love fantasy reading, but also like deep knowledgeable reading. I read this book recently called The Passion of New Eve, which is just very wild. Like it took me on a wild ride, but it was very interestingly written. So I think that would be my pick right now. But ask me next week and it'll be something else. So I don't have a set favorite yet.
I don't know. I have this feeling that you may like a book that's called When Women Were Birds. It's very poetic and also kind of spiritual. I really liked it. It was really
great book. I'm sorry, I just jumped over you. I think it's called When Women Were Gods, something like that. Something along the line, but it basically talks all about when God was a woman. It talks all about like in the past how the original deities were all female, and then once everything was sort of overtaken by Christianity and what like the Abrahamic religions, the female worshiping sort of died out. And that was really interesting to read about how we were gods.
I think you would, I don't know if you've ever been there, I think you would really love the city where I did my undergraduate, which is Rome. Because, you know, in Rome, there are so many pagan temples that were overtaken by Christianity. So they became Christian temples, so such as churches. But there is one in the center of Rome, which stayed exactly as it was. I mean, it was used by Christians, but it didn't change anything. Which I think it's really, it's such a spiritual and magical city that I think you will definitely enjoy that. I mean, all of Italy has got this bit of a spiritual kind of witchy feeling, but Rome is just stunning. It really is.
Hands down.
Yeah. So thank you so much. It was really, really nice. I've please open like a a book profile of book suggestions on your Instagram, because I will definitely follow that, because it's so nice. And I will definitely follow you on Instagram, because it's so interesting. And post, maybe you can post like little snippets of books on your stories, and I will see that.
So you'll see what I'm reading.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us on our Empowering Voices series. Thank you. I feel like I learned so many things every time I do an interview. But this was especially heartwarming. So thank you.
I feel like this would be so empowering and like enlightening. I feel like it'd be great.
Looking forward to see you on your next projects. I hope really to keep in touch with you. So we're always here, and so great that we have been able to do this collaboration between Until There Is a Cure and yourself. So really, thank you. I will forward you everything, like your PR will forward you this interview, but it was so nice. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.